So I've experienced sort of a rock bottom as a person that has brought a lot of clarity continually. Um, but out of that rock bottom, I've experienced a really satisfying purpose, because when you're so anxious that you can't think, or when you're so disassociated or confused, that you actually don't know, like you can't remember anything, and what's actually available to you to anchor off of is so strange and ambiguous, and there's so many good decisions to be made, and so many concerns about those decisions. You get overwhelmed about the importance of what your decisions are and all this other stuff, and that you basically are so confused internally, that a piece of hot pecs. Sorry. Nice pipe. Yeah, basically that's the rock bottom, is that truly, like, you've been incapacitated, because of the state of your mind, and I believe that's poor in spirit, right? That's poor in spirit. I think when you use the Bible not as a philosophy, but as a way to know God, as a way to relate to existence, and to locate yourself inside of that existence, not to try to police who's doing that the best with the Bible, but to actually see it as something that inherently coaxes out reason from you, right? Based on, like, how certain things happen, and because our culture has that culture of agreement thing, not understanding makes us anxious, and then seeing something that we didn't understand result in something negative or conflicting that we just don't agree with, at face value, we sever connections, and so we don't have the capacity to grow in relationships sometimes because of that. We don't have the capacity to discover things sometimes. Well, we do have the capacity. It's just that we're actually confused and giving our choice away from that. So, anyways, it's just that we don't get it. We're confused, and that's the whole thing. Is right. We're existentially disoriented. That's the thing. That's that rock bottom, existential disorientation. And out of that, there's this discovery of purpose, right? So let's just throw all the anxiety, all the fear, all the worry, all of the things that echo so loud inside of you, like a feedback loop, like a microphone next to a speaker, till you can't even hear yourself think, or you're cutting yourself off and there's discord inside you. Let's just call that existential disorientation, because that's really what it is. You're disoriented and you don't know how to anchor in the moment, and so you need to figure out some way to anchor in the moment in order to reason, make decisions. And you have options, but you have ones that are presented to you, but people know they're not satisfying. And so the reason I got into the car right now is because the thought crossed my mind this morning: why don't you just write every morning? Why don't you just casually write your book every morning? It's what you do anyway. You just write pieces of it. Why wouldn't you just write intentionally every morning. Few hours, you know, get up at 5 and then maybe start writing at 6 and rest at 8, you know, and then do whatever you got to do and then get at life around 9. Like, that would be a great rhythm, right? It makes a lot of sense. And I'm not saying I wouldn't do that at some point, but the main thing is every morning, the thing that I want isn't to write a book. It's not to produce. It's not to do anything. It's not even. And here's the other thing. That state that I described, that existential disorientation, it's painful. It hurts. It actually really hurts. When your mind's full of cortisol, when you're so afraid or conflicted or confused or disoriented, and you're at turmoil inside of yourself, it hurts. It's like actually very painful. And so it's not only disorienting, it's painful. And when you're in pain, it beckons, it necessitates, it naturally supposes questions of how to be not in pain anymore, or whether or not the pain is good or bad, right? And that's really the thing. Pain, yes or no? Pain, good or bad? That would be the flow chart. If pain is no, well, if pain is good, then pain yes. If pain is bad, then pain no. If pain is no, how make stop? If pain is yes, why pain? How do what pain is for faster? Right? But nobody wants to linger in pain for no reason. There's always a reason, even if you're a sadist, there's always a reason. And so it's painful. And what I've decided in that little flow chart I just described to you, pain, yes or no? Pain, good or bad? Pain, why? How pain stop? Simple, whatever. Simple flow chart. Because of that little line of reasoning, I've learned to ask sometimes, what is the pain? Why did Jesus suffer? What is Paul talking about when he says, I'm filling up what is lacking in your understanding of Christ's sufferings? And then, are you stopping? You have a turn signal on. You alright, honey? Oh, she's cute. She's having a nice morning drive, all caught up in her beautiful little day. Like me and her are the same. Did I signal? But yeah, so pain, and so now you have rock bottom, and because of disorientation, giving some purpose, and that purpose gets confused often. Is your purpose to try to help people existentially orient? That's not the purpose that I came up with. It wasn't to help other people. I often feel obliged to do that, as anybody who loves should, I suppose. Maybe not obliged, but not maybe not obligated, but maybe compelled, desirous. But no, that wasn't the purpose that came out of it. See, the disorienting pain gave me this question: why about the pain? Why about the disorientation? And what I found is that the pain was sensitivity. The pain was, in a lot of ways, not just bad. The pain was kind of good in that when you open your eyes after being in a dark room for years, it hurts. But seeing is good. Seeing is good because it helps you to actually navigate the good or bad about the pain. And that's why, when you're confused and you don't have any resources and you're in pain, and it keeps happening, you start learning from that pain something. And so I anchor on reality itself through the Bible, and it's taken a long time. It has taken a long time. But every motion, every movement toward health has been so encouraging. The question is, what does healthy look like? I realize that I'm in pain partially just because the culture is confused and is encouraging me to anchor off of things that cause you to be disoriented and in pain. And the culture's answer has been to ignore the realities that are causing that pain, so that way you can feel like you've successfully picked the right oversimplified answer, right? And so you find there's this pervasive group of people who have all said, pain bad, no to pain. And I think I'll go over there. And so, I find that there's some purpose to the pain. There's some movement inside the pain. I found really unusual validation. Really unusual validation. I discovered context. I discovered location of pain in Scripture. And then I discovered strange purpose inside of that pain. And then ultimately I discovered the pain was unnecessary, because the pain is necessary and was necessary, but the purpose of that pain was already brought about, was already conclusive, was already satisfying. And so there's no longer reason for me to be in pain, except for where I have yet to experience what I already know is satisfying to that pain. It has to do with my belief because when it comes to internal pain, it's because of what you believe. And so if you believe something that is causing you pain, you would need to then discover something that you believe also that satisfies that pain, and that would then relieve the pain inside. And so, anyhow, I've been in a lot of pain, and I've been confused, and I've learned a lot about a lot of stuff, and there's so much more detail inside of how all this works that is just clearly available, and I'm satisfied with my logic. I'm satisfied with my reasoning. I'm satisfied with what I've seen and what I've experienced. There is cohesion. There is connection. But remember how I said that it's not for people's sake? The purpose wasn't that I could help people not be disoriented, not be existentially disoriented. Remember that? And the reality is that thing competing for what the purpose is what's causing me pain now. That thing, helping people not be existentially disoriented, is not the purpose. It's a product, kind of, yeah, but it's not even how I'm reasoning. It's bifurcation. It's two purposes, right? It's scattering of purpose. It's an internal rule that causes you to veer, and when that happens, the belief that satisfies that pain is challenged. And now you have to pursue this other course in order to solve that. So it's not to say that this bifurcation, this two-ness, is necessarily bad. It's just that it's also disoriented. It's diverting. It robs rest, satisfaction. It robs a healthy life cycle, a sustainable rhythm of existence. It robs that, and it steals it away. And it makes the very thing that you are doing and that produces the glory of your life, the bloom of your flower, to never happen. Because it is part of it that you would learn how to be existentially oriented, and then help other people to learn how to be existentially oriented, not by agreeing with you, but by learning fidelity inside of themselves, agreement inside of themselves, and a process of reasoning inside of their own existential witness in order to find fidelity inside of themselves, which to me is the most exciting presentation of the gospel. But that's not how we've been taught the gospel. We've been taught it very, very different, but it's not consistent with Scripture. We westernized this thing. And when you see what westernizing something is, it's radically unhealthy. It's not a opinion. It's neurologically unhealthy. It's clearly medically bad for your brain. And it's clearly medically self-defeating and self-deceiving to the degree of wretchedness. It's so bad. It's so bad because it's so hypocritical, but doesn't know it. It's so incredibly confused. If the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Do you even know that the light within you is darkness? No. You don't. And so you're afforded vision from a privileged stance of peace. And what do you do from that privileged stance? Do you help shout directions? What all do you see from that position? Right? So, there it is. There it is. There's my bifurcation, right? And it's why when I stop texting people back, this isn't like little, this is like the ones you love, the ones you have labored to see do well, who you have gathered resources to help them, and they're struggling. Some of them with the threat of death, literally death. Some of them with the threat of inner turmoil, some of them with the threat of, purpose, some of them with the discouragement of isolation, some of them, have already killed themselves. And you're not writing anybody back. Like, it's not a small thing, It's not just like, TTFN, BFF Jill, texting, woo. No, it's correspondence with humans. It's at the crux of all of the interconnectedness of the necessity of society and human connection and community. Massively important. And you step away from it. And a lot of and all of the others are feeling that same need. And you step away from it. And abandonment is a really big issue. And insecure attachment is a really big issue. And the lack of fathers is a really big issue. And orphanhood is a really big issue. And you step away from it. And you step away from it. Now, you're not going to be able to step away from it if you don't know your purpose. You'll just stay in there until it kills you. And you'll be glad. And you'll hear to yourself in your own thoughts. Maybe I'll be like Paul, poured out like a liquid offering. But it's just not the purpose, Now, fidelity is the purpose. And depending on this fidelity that I'm talking about, it would be right to pour your life out like a liquid offering, or it would be not right to do so. It's that pivotal, the fidelity. Whether or not to do that thing. It's not just objectively good to do it. Not just objectively good to pour your life out like a liquid offering. It's not. there's this fidelity issue. All right, so now we're 25 minutes in. Let me go back to my original purpose here. The light within me has been darkness because of the bifurcated vision, because of the multiple standards of comparison. Am I doing this to help people, or am I doing this for my purpose? So what I've found and discovered is that there's an ultimate purpose. There's an ultimate. And from that ultimate, all other purposes flow. And it's what enables a person to have healthy rhythms inside of those purposes that cause it to be sustainable in this lifetime. What does healthy look like? Question. Where's the reference? Right? Now you find lots of little references to what healthy looks like in a metaphorical sense that then can apply back to a person. So understanding how a tree lives, if they're healthy or not, and understanding what those qualities are, and how those qualities compare to other qualities that a human would be experiencing, that'll give you a measure of wisdom. That'll actually give you a measure of true wisdom that is solid, and you're able to build off of that line of reasoning if you can keep track of the metaphor. And then you can overlay other metaphors where you've seen that other comparison in other places, right? Likeness of nature. Who is the one who chooses if your metaphor is prescriptively accurate? None but you. And you will always do that. It's actually what you're doing in your mind. Your right hemisphere is doing that constantly. And it's what forms beliefs. It's what forms convictions. What you observed. It could just be in walking through the woods. You could observe that the seeds from a particular bush need to be left alone and completely undisturbed for them to grow until there's an intimate relationship with what they're in, that they would be able to set down roots inside of what they're within, and that those seeds would need to be in a stable environment, a gentle place, before it could put up true leaves out of its little initial phalange it shoots out. You could notice that connects to that connects to any issue of immaturity, of any issue of discovery, of any issue of learning in life, whether it's a person or it's a baby, anything. It would need some shelter until it can become established. And that's pervasive throughout reality. And you'll have some people, who might not really see the necessity for a measure of shelter for a child because they weren't sheltered, and they might be confused inside, and they might actually put more strain on a child than is necessary because they haven't seen that. They might say it's time to increase the challenge. And what's wonderful is that if you at least had the parent asking those things, and the buy-in to actually ask those questions for the child, like hopefully unselfishly, at least a little bit, you might find that person is going to be problem solving their own inconsistencies for the sake of that child. And so that's all beneficial, that's all nice, but you have to find this metaphor. But ultimately, for a human being, the best reference for what healthy looks like wouldn't be in something else's nature, it would be in another human being. Now, if you could understand where human beings came from and what a human being is, you might be able to find that comparison is to is, likeness to likeness. But because we've been so confused, that didn't work, and so we need a person. Because we've been so confused about what reality is, we weren't able to compare nature to nature the way that it would have been amazing if we had. But the wisdom knew the necessary path. The wisdom knew what was needed, but still wouldn't abandon, I guess. And yeah, 100%. And so there's fidelity. Fidelity, consistency. Faithfulness. And so, the purpose is to see what healthy looks like. The purpose is to see another human being, is to see another person live in the same context and move about inside that context with intention and with wisdom and with mastery. Mastery. It's all a lot. It's all important. So I've discovered that intimacy with Jesus is the purpose. It's only through him that I can see what healthy looks like, and it's only through seeing him that I could ever hope to do anything else well. He said it himself that apart from him I could do nothing, and so I've searched out his line of reasoning, and I've been satisfied by it, and humbled by it, and taught by it, and ingratiated by it, and supported by it. So I am a beggar in need of wisdom, taken in by a rich man, and have been blessed by the orientation and faithfulness endlessly. And I've been forgiven of all of my folly from my ignorance or brokenness. And I love him. I love him. He has taken me where I was asking questions about the worth of my existence in a much more meager, survival-based way. How do I live? How do I go on living? He's taken me out of the question of how do I survive, and he's taken me into the question of what do you see that is gorgeous in this world, that inspires you, that you believe in, and how do you become the builder and the partner with God in the bringing about of that thing? I love him. I love him. Like, that's a really nice thing to do for someone. To take them out of survival, bring them into stability, help them to process their trauma, and then reintroduce them back into life with a brand new purpose. That's what the gospel is. And so when you go through that little whoop-de-whoop, I have now survived, I have now processed, I am here for a very clarified reason. And it's to create peace. First on the inside, then on the outside. First with you, and then you shelter others. But you shelter others. You don't support others. You shelter others because you want others to be supported also in the same reference. Because you want others to grow. You don't take an oak tree and plant it on one of the branches of another oak tree. It all roots into the ground. But you do take a more mature oak tree that grows up and it covers over a younger oak tree that's still rooted into the ground, and it helps buffer the harshness. It helps buffer the harshness of the elements, so that way that younger oak tree could get established in the ground well, and ultimately come into stabilizing the environment of the forest, which the oak tree facilitates the stabilization of peace. And so first on the inside, first with the roots, then on the outside, then the trunk and the growth and the fruit and the branches and the branches and the leaves and then the fruit, and inventions and stuff. And if you could see that, that clarity, you could see that that's what the gospel is pointing to, with Jesus being the most exalted one who's covering over us, and the kingdom of God being like a mustard seed. And if you could see God's heart as a person throughout Scripture, you could see in First Chronicles 20 through 21-ish God's intentions on pivoting a person out of war into rest. He does it with David to Solomon. And it's the same transition that is taking place with me, out of survival into purpose, into building with inspiration. And so the world, that's afraid will keep telling you to live a survival way. A fearful world would have told Solomon not to have trusted the rest that God gave him, and to keep doing life in a war mindset, because these people could turn on you at any moment. But that would be a very big distraction. And in the Bible standpoint, you were okay to trust God with that one. You were able to let him be your wall, him be your fighter, him be your protector, him be your provider. It's the shield of faith, and it's this radical decision. And you can test that thread to where it challenges every one of your fears, and it's a very worthy thread to grow on. And what you find is that if you live this way, you will always be pushing that thread of where faith meets fear. And what'll happen is the kingdom of peace will advance, because it'll always be about him advancing it. It'll always be about him stabilizing it, and he will always be faithful. But again, first on the inside, then on the outside. And so my purpose here is funny, because I'm a tinkery man. I have weird skills. I've been an electrician for multiple decades, and then change. I have built my own house. I have traveled around the world. I have attempted to learn many languages. I have tried to understand many cultures. I have successfully navigated many challenges that most people in the world truly have not. And I've overcome, truly. But I'll say, like Paul said, when he was like, I've done more work than all the other apostles, he followed that up with, but it wasn't my strength that I was using, it was God's strength. You see, when you approach life like a little baby, vulnerable, and trust God to be who it is, and then everything works out, people will honor you as if you had really fought the hard fight, but you were just resting and sleeping in the boat. Well, God was being faithful, and all you were doing was trusting God to be who he was. It's fidelity. And so I've seen that faithfulness in my life. And in fact, it's my staggering conviction, to the point where my beloved ones are reasoning with fear, and I'm separating, and it breaks my heart, because I will choose to anchor on God's faithfulness more than anyone else's comfort level. I love what I heard somebody say once. They said, I refuse to insulate people from the pain of their own unbelief. And it's funny, but it is a really, really, really important move, because when you are involved, when your whole life is based on trust, and other people are still trying to base it on fear, they need to learn to anchor into the ground, not try to root into you as a tree. It's just not how you're designed. You got to root into the ground, and you got to anchor in the faithfulness of God, who's substantiating reality. You have to find peace with God. It starts on the inside, then on the outside. which is wonderful, because if we realize the way this inside to outside thing, wash the inside of the cup, the outside too will be clean. If we realize that if we keep our imaginations fixed on God, he will keep us in perfect peace. If we seek him in the temple on the inside, if we come to him and drink, right, he'll heal our land. If we acknowledge him in all of our ways, he'll make our paths straight, and out of your bellies will flow rivers of living water. And then it'll be like Mount Hermon with the dewdrops coming together and all the little people, and then down the side of the mountain, and then the River Jordan, which is all about community. The beard hairs weaving together, Zakan, Zakan, Acharon, the dewdrops bloop, bloop, blooping together until they become a river at the top of the mountain, and then bless the land around. And then now you're at Ezekiel 47. And so it's about community, but it's all about gathering under that one reference point, that one anointed head, Jesus, the one who actually is a satisfying revelation of what healthy looks like. And so it's not about policing who goes to heaven or hell, or how to pray the right prayer, or if you follow the prescription of our interpretation of Scripture, you'll get to have this prize if you keep doing things like us, as with us as your reference. We've made ourselves intermediaries again, even as Protestants. But I've never protested anything. I was born into this. I like the mystical, and I like Jesus being the center. I have no issue with Catholics, and I have no issue with Protestants. Jesus at the center, and then all of reality looking up at him. I'm a happy boy. Because that's my conviction of what goes on inside of me. And so here's my thing. I'm a tinkery man, and thriving for me looks like me actually becoming wise in my tinkery ways, and actually using my skills to be the good news, the stabilizer of peace, the umbrella man, the shelter of the kingdom of God, both financially, emotional resources, all of it. And so that looks like from the inside to the outside. You see, I get inspired to create things now that I have been challenged and tested by life. I am a good ultralight camper. I could be the man who sleeps on the ground, wakes up, makes a fire. I could be the man who builds a house in the woods. I could be the man who goes into the woods and is thriving. I could be that man. I know how to do those things. I have learned to be at peace and to master living on the top of this planet. But now I have to take that wisdom and learn how to master being in this moment in a way that is actually helpful to other people, right? And so that's going to look like me being an example of health inside of this space. So that's going to look like, first, overcoming survival, right? You overcome survival. You're no longer in a survival mode, so you stabilize. That looks like finances, that looks like food, that looks like house, that looks like sleep, that looks like simple. But the problem is that we think that needs to be so big that it also solves all the internal problems. It doesn't. And you don't even need to make that very big. You can keep using trust as long as you want. And you could realize that God takes care of you all the way to the point of sending birds to bring you bread, which I've experienced. Like that was literally my childhood. We were miraculously fed all the time. David said it. He was like, I was young and now I'm old, but I've never seen God's people beg for bread. And that's the thing, is like, he really takes care of us, but we can suffer in the midterm because of what's going on the inside. That's the big one. And so surviving can be very simple. It's very easy to survive in this world. It's not very easy right now to have inner peace. And so then we try to solve it with hyper surviving. which is what's going on in the Western culture. We just don't see it that way. We are hyper surviving. We are over surviving to the point of deep anxiety and cultural issue, right? The issue is that it's compelled by people who are maybe in some measure glad. I don't know, but I think it's just disorientation altogether. But anyways, I'm a tinkery man. But all this stuff that I've navigated for me to be able to exit out of the pain, to understand all the stuff that I'm saying, just the context to be able to speak a clear sentence, has taken the bulldozer from the heart to the lips. The heart of the wise teaches his mouth and adds learning to his lips. The bulldozer of the faithfulness of God to plow through my fears for 4 years until I could say the things that I'm saying. But why did I want to say those things? So that I could live as me with God on the planet and be good news and let the hope that's within me come out and be made manifest in a healthy life that's fruitful and inventive and fun and nice and shelters people financially, shelters people emotionally, is a stabilizer of peace in the world, anchored in an unseen place underneath the soil, and then able to bring peace to the surface space. You know, it's taken me years to develop language and connect it with what was happening for all this, and I'm very satisfied. So now, over this time, I've articulated what I've had, partially because of the bifurcation of, is this for people or is this for intimacy with Jesus, my reference for healthy, from which all other purposes are supported. How am I going to support people unless I myself am supported? How am I going to be a shelter unless I myself am a shelter? Sheltered shelters, right? It's what love does. And this is all about discovering love and then orienting beneath love. And then expecting love because where you are. And that's the simplicity of it all. And that would be the simplicity of the gospel for everybody. And the overcomplication of the gospel, the politification of the gospel is tut, stop. Don't put it down. Go yourself. Be reconciled to God. Don't preach your wiggity wobbles. Don't jump into the argument. Don't go on Facebook and look for what offends you and let your nose lead you. Don't. Find peace. See if you survived. See if you could give God credit for that. See if you could start trusting that you're underneath love. See if you could start letting His faithfulness to you be understood as faithfulness from a person, so that way you could begin expecting that person. That would be the simple process that is actually neurologically, philosophically, theologically crazy robust, super duper simple, crazy robust, not Western pathological left hemisphere over dominance, deterministic everything, deterministic devouring. It's insane. It's given you anxiety. It's made your life horrible. It's made people kill themselves from anxiety when they were fine and safe, when there was literally no threat. It's horrible. So it starts from the inside, moves to the outside. And so I make these little inventions, and there's harmony throughout me with the elegance and the loveliness of it all. That's what Einstein, just with E = mc squared, where after years of people reasoning off of Newton's stuff, it was the elegance of it all that led Einstein. It's the elegance. But elegance requires vision and perspective and rest to be able to see the elegance. It requires the peace afforded by faithfulness. It requires that Solomon moment that nations would come to your light and kings to the glory of your rising. We can't be content to see everybody anxious. We can't be content with war. We can't say that it's God's will when we're not reconciled to him in our heart. We can't say that the darkness within us is light. We need to stop being professionals and saying the darkness within us is light. We don't have fidelity inside. We're not at ease. We're troubled. And we anchor on all sorts of different things, and it's caused us to be pulled in so many different directions. We try to anchor on every grain of sand, And so, yeah, one thing, intimacy with Christ, great, purpose. And then what? All this time I've been learning to articulate spiritual things, and people have respected me for it. I've gotten to have intimately good conversations and reason with people. I've been able to be a person who reasons with what I see and what I know. We haven't understood the difference between reasoning from your witness on reality versus reasoning on your favorite argument you subscribe to, because we haven't been careful to understand why we believe things. We haven't been honest with the measure of faith that we have. We haven't learned by reason of use to discern good and evil. We haven't gotten through the discerning process, and we've lived in such a reactive style of living where the left hemisphere's plan is just so solid of what you do in a Western culture that any right hemisphere activity that's more accurate on reality gets pushed out as if it's interrupting something that we already understood. It's wildly impertinent, and it causes me to be increasingly impatient as I entertain its ambiguity, because I already know what the answer is. Doesn't everybody? I don't know. Look around. Does it look like everybody knows the answer, or are people killing themselves because they're anxious? And so I've learned to articulate these things, and that's given me honor, favor with people, but it's a subsequent thing. And I'm grateful for the favor, for the honor, everything, all of it. But it's not my purpose, And so I wrote on my hand, and I could hardly even tell why it was giving me so much peace, but it was giving me so much peace. And I just wrote, not a guru. A guru is somebody who helps guide someone else spiritually. I'm not a guru. I don't have a little business card that says, come over and I will help you find inner peace. No, I'm a holistic, human-sized shelter that creates the opportunity for those moments by being a person in stride. But I'm not a business of that, and my purpose is not to help people become existentially oriented. It's a function I have, but it's not my purpose. It's not my ultimate purpose. My ultimate purpose is intimacy with God and the discovery of who He is through reality in every tree, bush, and ultimately to express. The way I put it once was, if my sum is to express beholden vision, then you, Jesus, are my radiant, eternal muse, endlessly satisfied, that I would express but never encapsulate. And so to build wise inventions is exciting for me, even if it doesn't conquer the world's market, because it's an expression of the Lord's beauty. So I would want to be a person who is fruitful with their inner harmony, which means I make decisions, which means I choose which medium I use to paint the painting of Jesus. And that becomes the opportunity. And so if I can then see clearly a greater measure of harmony inside of the world and the needs inside of the world that other people don't, then that's my glory. That's my glory if I make a good marketing decision. And if I make the right move, and if I pick something to develop that is, the least amount of effort for the most amount of gain with the prosperity of people's inner world considered holistically, that if I were to be lifted up as an example, that it would help people to have less anxiety. That would be my glory. That would be my glory. That would be that the stuff inside of me was actually accurate. And the Lord's been refining me and testing me, Christ in me, the hope of glory, the expectation of glory. Unless I believed I would see the goodness of God in the land of the living, I would have despaired. And this is the contrast. Despairing versus hope. And that's why I'm really annoyed at everybody's theologies. Because they violate trust, which is the only thing that God wants. You can't please God without faith. Apart from me, you can do nothing. You know? It's faith that links us to him. That's all of Hebrews 11. And if you could see faith, fidelity, like a rhythm in a song, and we're all, and somebody else is, and you have this awesome sort of interlay of beats. It would be based off of the rhythm. That would be the fidelity. It would be seeing that we are of the same song, the same heart, the same nature, literally the same spirit. When you look at that guy, you see that guy because bump bada bump 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 bada bump bump bada bada bump bada bada bump. You see the interlay of natures. You see that they are a part of the same song. Different expressions. Bada bada bump bump is different than bump bada bump bump. And then you add musical instruments and all the other stuff into that, and anyway, intimacy with Jesus. As we behold him, we become like him, and he's the hope and the shelter of peace and everything. And so it's I'm not a guru. There's a scene in my favorite movie, You Can't Take It With You, right toward the beginning, where Lionel Barrymore goes into Anthony P. Kirby's big office where the guy's like a tycoon and he makes a lot of money selling weapons to, he profits on war is what he does. He and there's a lot of that theme in Jimmy Stewart's movies and Frank Capra's movies. But yeah, so Lionel Barrymore, the guy who played Mr. Potter in It's a Wonderful Life, and who is also the great uncle of Drew Barrymore, who is my first crush in E.T. I like to think about that. You know, when she was a tiny little peanut, I was a similar sized peanut when I saw that movie. And I was like, man, she's awesome. Look at her. She's really cute. Didn't realize. Anyway, I also thought she was cute from The Wedding Singer. So, what a little kid thinks, you know. I remember always thinking as a little kid, you know, that could be my wife. It could happen. It's really funny how often I thought that, like as a little boy. I used to consider myself a hopeless romantic. I remembered I was really happy with that phrase as like a 5-year-old. But anyways, Drew Barrymore's great uncle walks in with some crutches, and he sees this guy at the counter. He's like a clerk. It's a little clerk thing that makes some shade for your eyes so you can see the typewriter. And he goes, "What are you doing going over all these doll figures?" Right? And he asked him, you know, it's like, isn't there something you enjoy in your life? You don't seem happy. You seem very stressed. And he's like, yeah. And he pulls out this little thing he made. It was this little mechanical music box thing that kind of danced. Or no, it was a little bunny that spun around and popped up. And he made this so that way you wind up the little, I would imagine, a coil spring, and it does the little music box movement, plays a little song, and it makes this little rabbit pop up. And he's looking at it with so much joy as it's singing the song and the little rabbit's dancing. And they're both looking at it. He's like, hey, that's really cute. All of a sudden, everybody in the office gathers around Mr. Poppins' invention. And they're like, wow, you made that? And they're all like really impressed at what he did. And he's like, yeah. And he looks at it and he's kind of satisfied. And he goes, someday I'll do nothing else but make these little things. Well, Mr. Poppins' boss comes around, stops the whole thing. He's mad at him. He has business with Lionel Barrymore. He wants to buy his house to build their factory. And he comes in and he shuts the whole thing down. And he yells at Poppins, tells him to get back to work. And then he tries to, awkwardly schmooze, Lionel Barrymore to try to get him to take his deal. And Lionel Barrymore doesn't even care about what this guy's saying at all, even though he's offering him all this money. He looks over and he's like, no, I just wanted to come in and tell you personally that I'm not going to take your offer. And he's like, what? And the guy's eye is squinting or twitching. And he's like, a month of fishing will clear up that twitch. And the guy's like so angry, And then I think maybe it was before this, but he tells Mr. Poppins, why don't you come live with us? And he said, live with you? He's like, yeah, and you could make your little things. He's like, well, what do you do there? He said, everybody does just what they want to do. And then he goes, but who takes care of you? And he says, the same one who takes care of the lilies of the field, Mr. Poppins. And Mr. Poppins goes, oh, I don't know. Well, then there's this interaction with this man trying to buy their house to put up their factory. And there's all this anger, and then somehow or another, the mean boss grabs Mr. Poppins' little music box and he goes to smash it. Well, Mr. Poppins grabs it and he's like, oh, you, and he's like real angry at him, and he's like, he just like starts rushing off, putting on his hat and his coat, and he's telling Lionel Barrymore, he's like, wait. And then his boss goes, if you leave, Poppins, you need never come back. And he comes around and he spits in the guy's eye, and he takes his invention and runs to catch Lionel Barrymore at the elevator. And then he looks over at him. Poppins looks at Lionel Barrymore and he goes, the die is cast. I'm a lily. And then Lionel Barrymore goes, have some popcorn. And he offers him the popcorn he was nibbling on the whole time, and then the elevator door closes. And so anyways, you can see I have the die is cast, I'm a lily on my hand. And so this has been my Kairos is this, that I'm not a guru, I'm not a spiritual guide, to try to do that. I am a little Mr. Poppins who's going to trust the Lord with his life and to build little inventions. And I have a whole list of them. I have a patent that I'd like to do and give my energy to it. But honestly, I've been having a hard time doing all of it because of all the text messages that are placed as if I'm a spiritual guru. And I'm having a hard time responding to any of them because I feel so much pressure for how everybody's doing, and I'm not trusting God with them. I'm holding all the weight myself, and it's causing my mentally crumble. And so I have peace because I trust the Lord, and when I go away from everybody, I'm fine. I've been tested with really, really hard things. It's not that I don't know how to do life or don't have the fruits of the Spirit. Like I am a person who's actually done well in community with people. I've actually been a good tested guy. It's not just that I don't, whatever. I don't even know what that is. Not that I'm just like defective or something. It's that I'm trying to support people as if I'm their ground. It's not like I want to. It's just that as a child, I was taught to be the ground, not to be the tree. And I'm learning that I'm a tree and that trees shelter other trees, but they don't be the ground for other trees. And so when you realize that, you encourage other trees to be like, there's water over here, bring your roots over to here and they'll drink. And then they'd be like, I don't see it. And then you'd be like, oh, that's because of that. Yeah, don't worry about that. If you keep growing around that, you'll get over to the thing, and eventually the thing you had to grow around will get pushed out of the way as your roots expand. I watched it happen. It was wild. You would have thought that would happen, but that's actually how it played out. And they're like, okay, you know. And then you're like, all right, I'm going to go back to what I was doing, making my little inventions. I don't know. But the point is that I can actually, build a business that way. And it's not that I would you know what I mean? But it's that I would actually create out of inspiration. And God's given me a unique opportunity to do that. Like he said it to Ezekiel, like, I've made your life a living parable. And every time I look backward on my life, it's crazy the stuff that I was learning when we were living in a tiny house, and how that really, really connected to the way that I was living internally, too small, and how that connects to Isaiah 28. The bed you have made is too short to lie on, and the blankets are too narrow to cover you. Your body's too big for that bed. But I just didn't discern what it was that I was, because I was always taught keep your head down, which is exactly the strategy of fear in Zechariah 1:20. And I was taught stay low to the ground, survive easily, smiggly through, and let the Lord, what else does the Lord require but to do justice, love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God, to keep your head down underneath the demonic strongholds. It's like, no, that's not what that is. No. So yeah, that's all. Buildings to birds. I really believe it. I want to write a book about it. Blah, 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 blah. All right. And so, but yeah, I got to go live now. And I don't have to be anxious, but here was the main thing: is why don't you just write every morning? Well, it's because I want to pursue intimacy with Jesus. But that to me has looked like, for years now, just getting any kind of word from him, letting go of my whole agenda, following that. However, I have some rhythms now with my father. I've been living on the farm for a while. I know what it's like to wake up and feed the chickens. I don't just only need to follow him, and he walks with me, and we could walk and talk about other stuff while we also feed the chickens, And he always meets me along it. I think the main thing is that I just give no place to fear. And if I'm at ease, there's no reason not to just go about the day. There's no reason to just go. And he's been trying to teach me this, that we're not separate. Like even the amen. Like sometimes the amen feels like, okay, now I'm leaving you. A lot of times I'd wake up first thing in the morning and I'd be like, where are you, God? And he's been like, no, we've been talking all night. I'm like, oh, well, that's great. Yeah, so I don't know. It's complicated, but I think it'd be nice to write those books in the morning. I think I'm a little bit afraid that I'm going to lose him, or he's going to lose me, and that I want to hide from people enough to the point where I don't, It's tricky. It's tricky for me because I don't know, am I just highlighting my own flaws? Because, like, when I go to talk to people out of being like Mr. Poppins, I sometimes veer over to being their ground. I think I just need practice being just the leaves. And, but he always finds me in it. And so I don't need to keep fear involved. And I'm not going to get lost. Like, that's part of it. It's like, I really feel like I'm going to get lost. I'm so scared that I'll get lost. I'm so scared that I'll start replying to the world in like kind. I hate that idea. But yeah, I mean, I could go and start writing the books. I just want to write the book out of the same heart, but I could just anchor in prayer over those topics. It'd be fine, because I don't think I'm going to lose track. I have little video journals and stuff. I could plan what I'm going to write, and I could meditate on that, all through the night. And it would probably be a wonderful thing to do, would be to meditate on the thing that I wanted to write about tomorrow. It would be very fulfilling. And so I think I could do that. I just think I need to move into a place of being Mr. Poppins and not a guru. And this is probably it, is that I'm so caught up in what God is doing with the church. I'm so caught up in meditating on the words that God's speaking over Regen and over the body that I'm in and all of it, that I feel like I'm a full-time intercessor, which is kind of how I've lived. And I think that's part of it. It's like, I'm not really a full-time intercessor. I think that God just wants to bring me into a spot where I've let go of everything and I've trusted him for all the stuff. And here's the reality about this. This is what's really cool. Part of the reason why I want to be a full-time intercessor is because I feel so tuned in to what God's doing that I feel like I can actually speak from that and be helpful. But here's the miracle. I have this testimony. When I let go of everybody and just pursued the Lord, not as like an intentional intercessor for anybody, but letting them all go, he prepared me for the conversations that I did have. I was always tuned in, and it was actually, I was a better listener. And so I think I'm carrying a burden that I really don't need to carry, and that's why it's so hard, is that I want to stay tuned in to what God's doing around, that I'm like watchful for it. But it's made me a second heaven prophet instead of a guy at rest. I'm just always looking laterally at spiritual things, and it makes everything dark and conflicting, and I can re-anchor in his faithfulness is always saving me. But there's a better way to do this, and it's Mary's way. And so, yeah, I could write my little books, meditate on those topics, and I can get completely aloof from what's going on in the world as I do. I could build my little inventions, write my little books, and make dinner for everybody. And I think it'd be good, it'd be the best that I did do that. And then I could just be leaves for other people. I could be shelter for other people. I could be a fellow tree with other people, but not a support. Not the ground. And then I'll bear fruit, and everybody can eat from that fruit, but the fruit's going to come from heaven. And all the while, it'll just be intimacy with Jesus, the discovery of who he is, the goodness of who he is. And that'll look like the books bearing fruit and blessing people. That'll look like the inventions making money and blessing people. And that's just walking by faith, not by sight. That's just moving out of survival into beauty. It's going from David to Solomon. It's inner peace, trust, like a child. So Lord, I freshly this morning hand you helping other people become existentially oriented as my purpose. I break that off. It's not my purpose. My purpose is to abide with you and to watch you do wonders in my life. And so I pray that you'd help give me grace for texting now, that you would release like angelic messengers who know how to text, that you would release wisdom to me from heaven, to be able to have wisdom in my communication, grace and elegance and favor and charm, even in being leaves for people but not ground for people, and not being a guru but being Mr. Poppins and having a different purpose that I'm up to. Oh, it's just so nourishing to my heart. And yeah, that's not why I'm, yeah, and then, but also just being able to respond to people without feeling responsible for them. Yeah, help me to have the compassion of leaves, not the compassion of ground. Yeah, and help me to have as much time as I need away from people too, though. Yeah, because I think I need to maybe stop with some of my patterns, and change into and stop maybe scheduling so much interceding time, and just go about what I'm up to. Not be like a professional minister, but just be a family guy. Yeah, just be a household family guy. So Lord, I pray that you give us wisdom for how to have worship and dinner in the house, but again, I'm not a guru, I'm Mr. Poppins. So I trust you with how that stuff develops. But I pray you give me some wisdom and insight, because we've lived this way for like 10 years, and so I need to be able to guide my wife and to be able to have insight for my sweet wife. So please give me wisdom on how to do that. But I also pray that you would help us to transition to where I don't know, at least we don't consider ourselves as full-time ministers that way. Maybe it's actually just igniting creativity and inspiration inside of the way that we worship, so that way it could be this fun thing that we do, writing music and flowing in the Spirit. I feel like that would probably do it. If you just took the labor out of it and turned it into the fun of it, then that would be better. And if it wasn't like this militant thing about having dinner with people, but that we just happily invited everybody over, like Harvey does, another favorite with Jimmy Stewart. Okay. Yeah, so do community as family, but be leaves. And so I think I need to practice being leaves and not the ground for a minute, which is what I'm doing this week. That's why I canceled with Dick, because I didn't want to keep pushing the intercessor button. Cool. All right, Poppins, not a guru. Leaves, not ground. Abiding with Jesus looks like creating with Jesus. Thank you. Amen.